Good morning. It's Saturday. It's starting to feel like fall weather, and this is College Football 134 live on the Covers YouTube channel and Twitter account this Saturday morning. That is Andrew Caley with his trademark backwards cap. I am Douglas Farmer. We have 49 FBS versus FBS games to ponder today, not 50. Liberty and Appalachian State's game was canceled by Hurricane Helene. We will make do with those other 49, and maybe I'll find a way to veer into an FCS game, perhaps UT Martin heading to Kennesaw State. Andrew, ignore my rambling. What game has you most excited today?
I don't know, Douglas. Is there maybe a big SEC matchup on the schedule? I'm not so sure. Maybe a team that faced off
Auburn and
in a couple
Oklahoma?
of teams.
Auburn and Oklahoma. Yeah, that's today.
Big one at Jordan Hare Stadium. But there's another one, in fact, that featured the SEC title game combatants last year as too. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's Georgia going to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. Yes, we've got a big one this weekend. I know you associate the SEC with corporate. It's about as close to the NFL as college football can get, and you get a little iffy about that stuff.
You don't mean that as praise.
It's like, yes, it's but for me, I'm a still believer in SEC football, and I think we're gonna get a really, really good game today in Tuscaloosa.
We can get to Georgia and Alabama. We will get to Georgia and Alabama, but let's talk about some others first. That is our ethos at College Football 134, which is why we welcome your best bets and questions in the live chat, why we encourage you to like this video, subscribe to the Covers YouTube channel. Andrew, I can see you really do want to talk Georgia and Alabama, but it's good content strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Put that off for a little bit. Just like I need to put off the Eastern Michigan conversation for a little bit, just until we're really warmed up for the morning.
Just a little bit.
Let's start with another pretty big game. I know we kind of skipped over it on Tuesday for content. Oklahoma State at Kansas State on ESPN at noon. Oklahoma State is a 5-point underdog on the road. I'm looking at that game, and I refuse to believe in Oklahoma State in general, but I can't get myself there with Kansas State. The offensive line, I think that offensive line is a problem, and that's keeping me away from believing in this game at all. Oh, Wildcats may win on a snap-by-snap basis offensively, but it's going to be mostly on explosive rushing plays. That's how they're going to do it. That can work, but it's not something I want to bet on.
Yeah, well, I'm going to call this the Who Cares Bowl because this is a Utah pod. Shout out to Bobby Newport in the chat there, Utah national champs. And these were supposed to be the two biggest challengers to the Utes in the Big 12 this year. OK State, of course, got manhandled by Utah with their backup quarterback in, and BYU is coming off that embarrassing 38-7 loss at BYU. Now, like you said, we're seeing K-State between -5 and -6. My gut here says actually to take the points with Gundy as an underdog, but like you mentioned it, I think we've been seeing some troubling stuff with like schematically on offense with them. And there's just it seems so crazy to me that Ollie Gordon is averaging 2.9 yards per carry over his last 3 games behind an offensive line that is basically the offensive line they had last year. So something's going on in Stillwater. I'm not really sure what it is at this point. But at the same time, like we've said, poor performances from K-State as well. Probably should have lost to Tulane. Did get blown out by a BYU. Avery Johnson has not developed into the passer that this team needs him to be if they actually want to be a contender in the Big 12. So with all things being equal there, I think I'd take the points, but you're in Manhattan. Obviously, they play better. Kansas State plays better at home. It's just, you can sit back and watch. But like I said, this is a Utah pod, so who cares?
This is a Utah pod. You are going to ride that 66-1 ticket until the day comes you can no longer. We can get into the Cam Rising drama later on today. It's going to be a theme all season, Cam Rising drama, and we will put that off for as long as possible, just like Kyle Whittingham does every opportunity he gets. We should move next to a pretty big game with some playoff implications. Louisville at Notre Dame, 3:30 Eastern time on Peacock. I want to note there are going to be plenty of people upset. A top 20 game is available only on Peacock. First of all, welcome to the 2020s. We are 5 years in. Second of all, Mom, Dad, you have my Peacock login. It should still be good. Text me later if you need the password. Louisville as a touchdown underdog, a lot of people find that trendy. Last year, Louisville upset Notre Dame when Notre Dame still had playoff hopes. Last year, I said pretty loudly that Louisville's offense was a sham. Louisville won that game thanks to five Notre Dame turnovers. I still think Louisville's offense is kind of a sham. In 2 games against FBS competition this season, Louisville has turned 16 possessions into 11 quality drives. All 11 have needed at least one explosive play. 16 explosive plays on the season, 13 of which were passes. Notre Dame doesn't give up explosive plays. It has multiple All-Americans in the secondary. On 42 opposing FBS possessions this season, Notre Dame has given up just 13 quality drives. Only 9 total explosive plays when you exclude garbage time. 3 of those explosives were Northern Illinois coming out ready to play when Notre Dame wasn't. Aside from that, 39 opposing FBS drives, only 6 explosive plays. That's what gets me to the window on Notre Dame by 6.5 against Louisville. It is my continued doubt in the Louisville offense. I maintain this offense is a sham, and it has less playmaking at the running back position this year, which has further compromised its genuine viability.
Yeah, not having the Jordan and Grando, like, that's been a big problem for Louisville this year. They scored 31 points last week in that win against Georgia Tech. But if you were watching that game, like I watched every play of that game, they had, I think, 24 points heading into the final minutes, and it took a blocked field goal return for a touchdown to get to them to that 31. They gave up. I agree with you, Mr. Georgia Tech should have won that game. They gave up a lot of passing yards to Haynes King. So that gets me to my thought process where I think Riley Leonard has to show what he can do with his arm in this game. He's obviously a good college quarterback because of his legs, and he supplements that with an okay arm. But this is the game where I think he has to be like, hey, I can attack you with my arm. And I think usually your general thinking when it comes to football is you run the ball to set up the pass, right? That's just a basic football concept. But I think it's got to be a little bit opposite for Notre Dame today, because Louisville ranks 88th in defensive success rate on dropbacks this season. So Riley Leonard, if he can be effective passing the football on this one, that'll then open things up for the run game. If you can get 6.5, I like Notre Dame at that number.
I was glad to get the 6.5.
I don't like agreeing with you.
I know you hate agreeing with me. I didn't expect to still get 6.5 this morning. I expected to get an even 7. I'm paying a little bit of juice. Neg 112. Neg 112 is not going to make me flinch. I will point out your question about Riley Leonard's arm fits in with Bobby Newport's thought of taking small change on the under 45.5. If Riley Leonard's not going to produce with his arm, which he hasn't yet this season, only 1 passing touchdown, this game going over gets difficult, because clearly I'm doubting the Louisville offense. And if Notre Dame can't score with efficiency, 45.5 begins to be a bit of a number.
Yeah, I get that thinking as well.
We then start to get into the night slate, but we aren't going to go to the headliner yet. I refuse to go to your SEC corporate bias.
Come on.
Nope.
Come on.
There is a playoff game today, and I'm not talking about a conference championship play-in. I'm talking about a playoff game. Washington State at Boise State is at 10 Eastern on FS1. Washington State is a 6.5-point underdog. When I say there's a playoff game today, I mean looking at this week's odds to make the playoff. You look at the group of 5 teams only. Boise State leads the way at plus 250. Liberty at plus 400 should be taken off the board now that that game at Appalachian State was canceled. Liberty's not going to have a single quality win. They're going to be – I think their average opponent will rank in the 140s, and we're college football 134. That tells you how bad the average Liberty opponent is. And then it's Washington State at 5-1. Today's Boise State-Washington State game is going to set up our front runner for the playoff. Washington State will be a touchdown favorite in 5 of its 7 remaining games. Just better than a pick'em at Fresno State in 2 weeks, something similar to that at Oregon State on November 23rd. I look at this game with great intrigue.
Yeah, I will be interested to see what will happen and if Washington State wins this game, but once again, but they don't have and Boise State goes on, say that's the last remaining loss on the Boise State schedule, and then they go on to win the Mountain West, like in, say, dominant fashion. It would be interesting to see what the committee does in that sense. Washington State, obviously, they burned me last week in that San Jose State game. I thought they were going to cover with ease They did not, obviously. Gut says once again, we've got another overreaction line to that poor performance by by Washington State in that San Jose State game. I think Boise State is a deserving favorite. Should they be favored by a touchdown in this game? I'm not so sure about that. Obviously, Jinty is awesome, but I'm not really convinced by what else Boise State has done at this point. They hung with Oregon, sure. We kind of feel, we've talked about this, we kind of feel like Oregon has been kind of playing with their food at this point of the season a little bit, a little careless and still trying to figure things out. Then they beat up on Georgia State. Nothing that really impressive. They haven't covered either game they were favored in at this point. That said, the total is what has my attention here. Both teams play at a fairly high pace. I get that, but running the ball is a key here for both teams. So I kind of like Bobby Newport is just stressing me out right now, taking the 80 plus total, but I think under 65.5 is going to look like like a solid play when all is said and done here today. Like, I think that's what we're leaning towards here. Running the football, making that clock continuing to move. I think that's the side I would lean towards.
I like your thinking. I especially like you pointing out this spread does feel big. I pulled up the SP Plus numbers. SP Plus, not the end all be all. SP Plus would make this maybe 4.5, not 6.5 or 7. So that agrees with your thought. This is an overreaction line. I am certain of two things. I am certain that Washington State has the best unit on the field in its offense, certainly by EPA thus far. That is a credit to the joy of quarterback John Mateer. And the other thing I'm certain of, with John Mateer playing in what is a Pac-12 game at 10 p.m., we're going to have some chaos tonight after dark. John Mateer is already just bred for that, and now we have to acknowledge realignment in the season idiotic, but we can call this a Pac-12 game. We can. That's why
Pac-12 after dark is back.
It is back like it never left. We're going to lean into that one because it's going to be far more entertaining. That game will have more points, more drama, more playoff implications than your corporate shilling for Georgia and Alabama, 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. Georgia is currently a 1-point favorite. Over under a 49.5. Give me a yawn if you think it's going to go under. Give me a yawn if the idea of watching that kind of football sounds a little bit boring. Obviously, I'm being a little facetious. I'm looking forward to this game. On Tuesday, I gave out Alabama plus 110 on the money line. That's down to plus 105 on the money line. I'm still sticking with the Tide. I haven't flinched one bit.
Yeah, I'll give you a point for one of your comments there. I don't think that this game will impact the overall playoff picture at all. I think both teams will likely be in the playoff no matter what, unless something disastrous happens to both. Maybe Carson Beck gets injured and Georgia. You want jump in? Go ahead.
I did realize this week that no matter who loses this game, they have 3 top 15 games remaining with 2 of them on the road. And I do not expect any 3-loss team to make the playoffs. So I'm not saying it's likely they were to lose 2 of those 3 remaining top 15 games. But you lose the top 15 opponents. That's supposed to be hard. It is possible.
Yeah, it is. It is possible. I think this is gonna be a classic SEC matchup. I really, really do. I expect these guys to kind of like feel each other out early. We talked about this a bit on Tuesday. There's a slight chance that DeBoer is just like takes the reins off and like, hey, Jalen, just let it fly real early and see what happens. But this Georgia defense has clearly shown that it's capable of shutting down teams that are capable of scoring. Like Clemson win is looking better and better each week, and I think if there is a team in the country that can limit those explosive plays from Alabama, it's Georgia, obviously. Alabama has been great. They've outscored teams. It's a ridiculous point differential right now. Let's see what it is real quick. 147-26. That's a lot of points, but I think they're still searching for some consistency because they've relied too much on those explosive plays. and they were just ranked 36th in offensive success rate. So if Georgia can limit those, I think we're going to see some lower scoring from Bama in the first half. And on top of that, we talked about this a lot, the Carson Beck thing. Like, he looks a little uncomfortable without Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. His not having that first read guy where it's like, okay, I know where Bowers is going to be. I know where McConkey is going to be. I make that read. I make that throw. And that's what Georgia did last season. And it was quite effective because those guys were really good. It looks like it's really hurting him to not have those guys this year. It hasn't helped at all that the run game has been stuck in the mud. I will say that Trevor Etienne kind of got going late in that Kentucky game, but this Alabama defense, not the big Dallas Turners or Will Anderson stars on this defense this year, but from top to bottom, like, this might be one of the most solid Alabama defensive units we've seen, and on sometimes second in defensive success rate heading into this game. I think, like I said, lots of feeling out early on, lots of haymakers early, and we're going under 24 in the first half. This is I was like, I wasn't sure if I was going to make this a best bet, but like, the more I talk, I think this is going to be a low scoring game. Best bet here, Georgia Alabama under 24 in the first half. Classic SEC like slugfest, and yeah.
I was waiting that entire time for you to finally say you were making the bet so I could put the banner up. You acted like you weren't sure you were going to make this bet. I've known you were going to find a way to make this a bet since you first leaned toward it on Tuesday. There are a few things in life you like more than a Kirby Smart first half under, especially now that you can't really back SMU. You've had to find somewhere else to funnel your passion.
Come on. Wow. That was a real stray. Like, I know that I was high on SMU entering the season, but anyways. Okay.
Was it a stray at you or was it a stray at the ponies? I think I hit the ponies more than you. Here, you don't know what to say. Let me set you up with some rapid fire work just so we can sincerely tell people we discussed more than 4 games, including your corporate nonsense, before getting to our best bets. Let's start a little out east. Boston College quarterback Thomas Castellanos is out today due to injury, replaced by FIU transfer Grayson James. That news moved this line down to BC by 8. It was originally 12.5. Overreaction, 4.5 points. Underreaction or appropriate move of 4.5 points?
I think it's probably appropriate. He's probably not worth 4.5, but books gotta have to take it through those key numbers there. Like, 8 is kind of just like a whatever number. They're obviously not going to take it down to 7 or 7.5, and they've got to get it past the 9.5 sort of thing. So I think it's the appropriate move. But can Boston College still cover this number? Sure, that Western Kentucky defense is god awful. So.
My neighbor texted me yesterday, true story, I can show it to the world if we want, wondering if I thought Northern Illinois has a viable chance to upset North Carolina State on the road. You were high on the Huskies after they upset Notre Dame. You got that gorgeous 80-1, I think it was, playoff ticket. The Huskies are 7.5-point underdogs and as high as plus 265 on the money line. How would you have responded to my neighbor?
Going into this week, I would say that North Carolina State's defense has been bad, like really bad, way worse than anybody would ever expect a North Carolina State defense to be. The offense has also been bad. It's a pretty good matchup, I think, for Northern Illinois' defense. They can also play that ball control game. I think at more than a touchdown, there's some value in the Huskies here. They had their letdown, they'll bounce back, and I think this is a decent matchup for them.
But would you take them to pull off the upset? Would you consider a little bit of a sprinkle on that money line?
Sure, why not? You can a little sprinkle. Just it's the same situation. Like, this is a worse team than Notre Dame is. They know the blueprint that they need to do to be successful in this one. I think things kind of got a little sideways for them in their last game. They should have won. They were up 17-7, and then they just kind of got a little sloppy and gave it away and got the birds flipped to them by a Buffalo kicker to lose a game, which is something I haven't seen before, but was what makes college football so great. So I think NIU, sure. Let's sprinkle on money line.
On Tuesday, you gave out James Madison by 20.5 against Ball State. That line opened at 15 at Circa Sports on Sunday, is now moving to 21.5. Too much of a move. We are at 6.5 points total in the last 6 days.
So I'm going to say that the move is appropriate because I think the line opened too short. Like, I would have lined this at about 17 and not 15. So in that case, obviously there's been a move in James Madison's favor no matter what. But no, in the sense that it seems like it would be a normal progression of betting in a situation like this, particularly when you consider, like we talked about, 9 yards per carry allowed by Ball State this season. James Madison rushes the ball 60% of the time. So they have the ability to cover this number. I think there's still, I prefer the 20.5, a little bit of value at 21, any higher than that, and I start to be a little more cautious.
Jalen Daniels has thrown at least 1 interception in every game this season after throwing just 8 total in his previous 18 games. TCU has not picked off a pass in the last 2 weeks. Over under 1 interception for Jalen Daniels today.
Let's go under. He needs this. He needs this one. Yeah, he needs this. It's at home. They need this win. If they don't get it done this week, like, this Kansas program is in real trouble. Like you said, no picks in the last 2 weeks, just 2 all season. I say he has his best game of the season. No picks for Jalen Daniels today.
And last in our not so rapid fire segment, Illinois at Penn State is a top 25 game in rankings only, and underscores how we should ignore the AP poll entirely. Agree or disagree?
Ah, geez. Disagree, just because I want to disagree with you. Let's say Illinois deserves the ranking. The rankings are the rankings. Like, it's just a number at this point, but Illinois is deserving of that ranking because of the way they've played this year. And Penn State is obviously top 10, maybe top 5 team this season. So yeah, like, just enjoy it for what it is. Have some joy in your life, Douglas. Come on. This is a top 25 matchup. Enjoy it. I don't care that it's a 17-point spread. I would probably lean towards Illinois covering it, maybe to go over their team total of 13.5. Like, come on. More joy in your life. Let's go.
You can go ahead and side with Parker on Illinois. I gave out Penn State on Sunday. Coming next week, Andrew Caley will be hosting college football, the AP Top 25, because that is all he cares about. While we here at College Football 134 will remind the world that Eastern Michigan is 4-0 against the spread this season, and they will make it 5 today by covering the 2 touchdowns at Kent State. That is the kind of ethos we seek here, because the EMU dominance continues today, Andrew. You want joy in my life. Chris Creighton and the cement factory known as Eastern Michigan bring me joy in my life.
Oh my goodness. Kent State, they're on a 3rd-string quarterback who, if you go back and watch the end of their last game, got his hands stepped on by his own lineman, and he is supposedly starting today. So EMU, baby. Let's go. EMU.
Finally, you're catching on. We should also call out, we got a couple of comments here pointing out the Battle of New Mexico today. New Mexico at New Mexico State. The road team is an 8.5-point favorite, and you've got to give a lot of credit to Bronco Mendenhall for getting them to that position already. He took over we discussed how little that team had returning this season, and they're decent, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I'd lean towards Broncos team, and here he has the coaching edge, so that's basically what I'm looking at. They've shown some capability on offense this season, so I haven't looked much deeper into them other than that. So yeah, let's go New Mexico and Bronco. Get him back to a big program.
I said, he's abandoning our College Football 134. I kid. You're not abandoning that outright. Let me set you up here.
Can we talk about what I want to talk about here?
Your line value from Tuesday, is that what you want to talk about? Because that's next in the outline.
No. Oh, well, okay. Well, you just set me up however you want, and we'll go whatever you think is best here.
I want to give you a pat on the back. Your Tuesday bets. Okay. You got JMU. You bet them 20.5 on Tuesday, 21.5 now. You gained 25 cents on that Houston team total under 13.5. And now UNLV moved from 3.5 down to 2.5.
Let's
can
talk
get into
about
that
UNLV.
We can get into that situation a little bit later. My Tuesday bets, Bama, a little bit better on the money line. Nebraska, picked up some juice on the neg 10, or it's even 10.5 now. I can't quite decide if a team total key number is worth 18 cents. Looking at you, Bucky. And again, quarterback nonsense. Utah fell from 11 down to 9. Actually, it fell as low as 7. You know that this came back up to 9 this week, which I assume means Kyle Whittingham is telling people Cam Rising will play. Hey, Andrew, quick question. Will Cam Rising play today?
No, he will not.
Anyway, that Tuesday show, because it's nonsense, and I will blaspheme Kyle Whittingham before much longer. That Tuesday show is our strength. Like right there, I listed off 7 of our bets. 4 of them had positive value by today. 1 didn't really move, and the 2 that moved against us is quarterback nonsense. You want to talk about that UNLV situation? We can talk about that UNLV situation. Your 3.5 bet on Tuesday.
I actually did my job, and I've looked down this list here, and it says that you have some thoughts on it. So we can wait. We can wait for your thoughts.
Anyway, also, I want to say
really quick, really thanks. Look, like we've got all this engagement in the chat. We'll get to everything as when we get to it here. We're gonna comment on everything. Thank you guys so much for all of this support. It's been awesome. Please like, subscribe, share, all the verbs, as Doug likes to say. Verbs. Please, we really appreciate it. It's been so much fun doing this with you guys on Saturday mornings.
And Tuesdays, College Football 134 is available on all your podcast platforms. Thanks to producer Jameson, we get it up every Tuesday evening. He wants us to bring back the Big Ten West. Don't worry, there will be a Big Ten West Memorial Game of the Week discussed by the end of today. Now that we've recapped that Tuesday value, and we're getting more comments that we will continue to rifle through as we hit these, do you want to find us some value today? Jameson kind of threw you under the bus, went out publicly and said we would have winning picks. Plural. I think he's looking at you when he puts that S on there. Can you help us out with some value today?
Guy beats me finally last week, and he just it was rough. Last week was rough. We have to elephant in the room. Last week was rough for me, but once again, we've had lots of closing line value, so the process is pretty good. We're going to stick to that process, and it's going to work out. Producer Jameson, can you pull up? I forget who said it, but someone mentioned Colorado going to get run all over by UCF, and 100%. Carlos, yes, Colorado is going to get run all over. Like, there is going to be some angry runs in this game by UCF. So Dion can't help himself, obviously. He came out and said most recently that it's rumored that UCF is having a big recruiting weekend at the Bounce House this week, which is gonna be bumping today. But it's all because Colorado is here. The Buffs are here. Everyone wants to see Colorado, and sure, there may be a little bit of truth to that. But those players who were at this game, are they gonna want to go to Colorado after watching how UCF can run all over this Buffs team? I think it's crazy that you give UCF bulletin board material when they're like, also let's look at the spread. It's 14.5 points right now. Like, this is not expected to be a close game at this point. Gus Malzahn's high tempo power running offense should be a nightmare for a team that is soft in the trenches. And you can bring up some of the numbers. Yeah, they rank just 69th in opponent yards per rush, but the best offense they faced is Nebraska. They rank 50th in offensive success rate. UCF ranks 2nd in the country in offensive success rate heading into this matchup. It's just, they're going to be a big problem. That trio of running backs the Knights have, they're going to set it up. But running QBs have also been a problem for the Buffs at this point. Cam Miller from North Dakota State in that opener, if you remember, he rushed for 81 yards and 2 scores last week. Sawyer Robertson, he rushed for 82 yards. And I think Jefferson's probably at least the most powerful runner and maybe the most skilled runner of those 3 guys. He's going to have several designed runs in this game. He's carried the ball at least 9 times in all 3 of UCF's games so far for a minimum of 39 yards. He's topped 46 in each of the last 2 and 5 yards per carry in those 2. I think this is another great matchup for him. So KJ Jefferson, UCF quarterback, over 40.5 rushing yards in this matchup. Love this play. And that's available at -115 over at Bet365. Sorry for those of you who cannot bet college football player props, but for those who are out there, this is one I really love.
I want to know. Oh, we're going to Mr. Gerg bring back one
the
of our
Colorado
best
alternate sack. Yes, we have to touch on the Colorado alternate sack line.
That is a hefty number. Central Florida is not defensive line driven like Nebraska. This bit began with Nebraska's defensive line for a reason. We'll also point out taking the UCF points in the game over kind of does correlate. I like that thought more than thinking about 10 sacks.
I think a reasonable number. Yes, I agree with you that UCF's defense is not a Nebraska defense or even like a North Dakota State defense sort of thing in terms of defensive power up front. But I think we can set the line at 6.5. I think that's a reasonable line.
I'll take the under. Although I will say maybe there's a little bit of anger, a little bit of bitterness. Now, Hurricane Helene, real deal. Don't crack jokes. It's very real deal.
No.
I don't believe Orlando's in the path. Nonetheless, the Colorado social media team trotting this out this week as their hype graphic should be criticized, should be pointed out as just ignoring all current events. If Central Florida wants to tune them up a little bit, I could understand that. But given that choice by Colorado,
I think they're gonna with Dion's comments and that. Like, I don't understand why you're giving this team that wants to literally run the ball down your throat. You're giving them even more reason to have some angry runs. I don't get it. So we'll see.
I'm now going to take the baton from you and lead us off with my second bet of the day after that Notre Dame bet. I am getting the worst of a number, which I never like. That's part of why you should listen to the Tuesday show. You hear us run through those values we got on our 7 bets on Tuesday. By Saturday morning, the numbers are beaten into the best form they will have all week. It is tough to get a good number. When I say I'm taking Michigan at 10.5 against Minnesota, I'm getting the worst of the number. But here's the thing. Good things are not happening in Minnesota. The Twins somehow blew a certain playoff spot. The Vikings will lose tomorrow against the Packers. And the Timberwolves traded Karl-Anthony Towns this week, last night, to my chagrin. So here's our candlelight vigil to Kat behind me here. That will be up all day because I'm not.
What did they trade him for? What did they trade him for? Can we break that down? Can we turn this into? Let's get. Is Mettler watching? Is Mettler in the chat? No. Let's get Mettler in here.
We will not be turning our college football pod into an NBA pod. The weekends and frankly Mondays and Fridays in the fall are for football, not for the NBA. As much as I am a fan, more genuinely, Michigan is going to run the ball. We know that. The quarterback change last week was with that in mind. Minnesota gives up explosive rushes, and it's not great on down-to-down basis against the run. The Gophers' defensive strength is against the pass, which won't matter today. For once, I have faith in Michigan finishing drives because it is going to simply run through Minnesota. On the other side of the ball, the Gophers have fundamental problems offensively. Some of that has been injury-related, but there just isn't anything to hang a hat on. I think Michigan's going to win this game 21-0. 30-40. It is our Big Ten West Memorial Game of the week.
There you go. There you go, producer Jameson. Big Ten West Game of the week. Yeah, Minnesota is not looking good, so don't hate that.
I will also point out, Jared, you can take your Nova Knicks vibes and shove them because clearly those vibes were never strong enough if they were broken up before they even played. Get us back onto college football before I devolve.
College football. Yes, we're here to talk college football, not the fact that both teams made the weirdest trade ever. Anyways, let's go back to the SEC because I know you love it so much, Douglas. Let's go back to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Oklahoma taking on Auburn here. So Oklahoma's offense, like, bad. Like, well, this is my favorite. We got a they bad segment. Oklahoma's offense, they bad. So bad that Brent Venables had to make a switch at quarterback last game, benched 5-star recruit Jackson Arnold for Michael Hawkins Jr. Now, Hawkins did pretty well in the later stages of that game. I think it was something like 13 for 18 for 132 yards and a score. But I think Tennessee was just like they had the game in the bag. I think it was 25 or 22-3 or something like that when he came in. They played pretty vanilla at that point. Now Auburn, who has a solid defense, 46th in defensive success rate, playing at home, playing at Jordan-Hare Stadium is no joke. And they've had all week to prepare for Hawkins' first career start on the road in that venue. Like, that's not easy. Meanwhile, I think Oklahoma is starting to get a Brent Venables defense after a few recruiting cycles. That's a pretty good unit right now. 13th in EPA per play, 29th in defensive success rate. And Auburn has QB issues of their own, obviously. They started with Peyton Thorne. He was throwing a lot of picks. They had to bench him. Backup, throwing a lot of picks, went back to Thorne. So I expect Auburn to try to run the ball in this game, milk the clock, shorten the game. Low scoring. This looks like another SEC low scoring first half. So my best bet for this one, we're going Oklahoma Auburn under 22.5 in the first half. You can get that at minus 22 or minus 118 over at FanDuel. I'm seeing 21.5s as well, mostly, but go get that 22.5. But I'd still take the under 21.5 as well. This is it's a young quarterback in a tough stadium, two bad offenses, solid defenses. It just makes all the sense in the world to me.
I look at that and I really appreciate when you find these first half unders. It's kind of how I feel about team totals. It's a way to target a game in a specific way to find a lean, find an angle. The college football market, especially in the bigger conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, even the Big Ten West Memorial games of the week, the lines are so sharp that if you find those team totals or those first half totals, you can find better ways to hit them. I always appreciate when you come in with those because it is that little bit of an angle that is not as fine-tuned by the market. So
we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about this a lot. Like college football is not the NFL, right? Like it's a really, really different game. And the longer college football games go, the more sideways things can get sometimes. And your handicap gets a little more odd the longer it goes on. So yeah, if you can eliminate variables where I think these college football coaches are very much scripting these first 15, 20 plays of a game, I think there's an edge to be had there, and I'd prefer the first half totals in a lot of senses.
Mr. Gerg has one more thought on that game we should know. I do not believe you can bet Hawkins gets benched and Arnold finishes the game, but I would, whatever the number is there, I'd see value because it is.
That's what we need. We need what? So what's the over under for players to attempt a pass in this game? Like, is it 3.5? Like usually for a game like
that's a Super Bowl only prop bet. I've never seen that anywhere except the Super Bowl.
But imaginary line, like, would they set it at like generally you'd be like, is it 2.5 because if someone's gonna have a trick play or whatever in the Super Bowl? But this is like, do we set it at 3.5 because we're gonna see both teams play two quarterbacks like in an SEC showdown?
That sounds about right.
College football is wild. College football is wild.
A game that has underscored how wild college football is, but we are certain there will be fewer quarterbacks passing because there are fewer quarterbacks involved. You wanted to talk about it earlier because you failed to realize that I have a best bet on this. We're going to slow play this conversation because there's so much going on. UNLV, for those who did not notice, late Tuesday night, the UNLV starting quarterback Matthew Sluka announced he would be sitting out the rest of the season. He's played 3 games, so if he sits out now, he can maintain a year of eligibility because of a supposed NIL dispute. Now, he said, who knows who was lying here about the NIL dispute. Sluka's dubious agent basically says it comes down to $88,000, but he was willing to negotiate that down to about like $8,000 of dispute. Like he is some of the things he has said. They're giving us $3,000 a month. We were willing to take $5,000 a month. So you're debating this over $8,000. To me, there's a lot of. It doesn't look great for anybody. Certainly, nobody's coming out of this better. But I look at this. I'm hearing these numbers, and I'm thinking, if UNLV thought that Matthew Sluka was $8,000 or $88,000 better than his replacement, they'd have paid it. They have a playoff possibility. They're 3-0 with 2 wins against Power 4 competition. They're going to be favored in almost every game. They should still be underdogs at Oregon State and against Boise State, both in late October. But otherwise, they're going to be favored across the board. If they win today, they are going to be a favorite to make the Mountain West title game. Like, this is a team with a lot going on. If they really thought, hey, we need you, they'd have paid $8,000 or $88,000. Instead, they're going to their QB1 from the spring, Malik Williams, which now we've got Jared hopping in the chat asking, will UNLV actually pass now? Sluka was completing 44% of his passes. Malik Williams is a better passer with more experience than Sluka. He's not immobile. You have to have a running quarterback in the go-go offense. He's got more than 1,600 career rushing yards and 24 career rushing touchdowns. Williams might make this offense two-dimensional. I don't know enough about UNLV finances to know if this backup was $8,000 or $88,000 worse than Sluka, but I get the distinct vibe that they made a Moneyball decision. And I'm going to take the value. I'm going to take UNLV now at 2.5 against Fresno State. This was 3.5 when you gave it out on Tuesday, rose to
Correct.
4.5 Tuesday evening, jumped all the way across the fence, but we've settled at 2.5. So you're telling me that Matthew Sluka was worth 2 key numbers? I don't think so. We're going to have a passing game that will unlock receivers Ricky White III and Jacob DeJesus. I think UNLV might end up better off. I think UNLV should win today. I think I'm getting great value thanks to those 2 key numbers. They no longer are a worry for me. UNLV 2.5 to me is as much about Billy Bean as it is about Haj Malik Williams. And I'm going to take it all. I'm going to take it at 2.5, and I'm going to enjoy my day.
You know what's going to happen to me, right? Like UNLV is going to win by 3 points. Causing
if everybody here wants you want the best bet of the year, it is UNLV to win by exactly 3 points. So I win this bet and Andrew loses.
Exactly. Well, you hit the nail on the head there. UNLV was running the ball 76% of the time with Sluka, and I don't know, like apparently the UNLV wide receivers were tweeting out like the big concern when this happens is what's going on in that locker room after this, right? But apparently the locker room's in really good shape, and the receiving room is like happy that they're going to get the ball a little more again. It's a good matchup for them against Fresno State. Like that Fresno State defense has had some issues, so I don't know. Like, and again, I think it's still the right side.
This was QB1 in the spring. Sluka didn't get on campus till halfway through the summer. Haj Malik Williams knows these receivers. They were thrown together from December through July with him as their primary passer. They know each other. This is not somebody coming in blind. I'm very pleased that I got this below a field goal. I really did think it might come all the way back to your 3.5.
I'm stunned. I was like when this all happened on I think it was
Tuesday night,
right? Like we recorded
Eastern.
the pod. We recorded the pod. We released it and with my minus 3.5, and then he immediately tweets out that he is going to redshirt the rest of the time. And it was like, usually my bad beats wait until the game is actually played, but to see the line move the way it has, it's encouraging. And doing a little more research and seeing that this offense could be in better shape. Who knows? So at least in this game,
it could be.
Yeah.
There's another locker room with tumult that you want to get into, and I'm a little surprised by this pick. So I'm going to let you run with it.
Yeah. I like UNC on the money line today. They had one of the most shocking losses of the season to this point. They lost 70-50 to James Madison in a game that was, I think it was like 52-20 or something like that at half. The game was over at halftime, basically. But once again, I think we're looking at another overreaction. This line opened. UNC was a 3-point underdog against Duke, who is undefeated. But this is an overreaction, I would say, to a couple of things. Obviously, that loss to the Dukes is a big one. But then it's Duke. Sorry, this is confusing. Dukes and the Dukes. The Duke Blue Devils record is the other thing. They are a perfect 4-0 heading into this game. They're at home. It's a rivalry game, 3 points. But obviously, there's been a line move in UNC's favor here. Now we're sitting in the 1.5-1 range. But my thinking was that James Madison game was always going to be tough for UNC. Nobody was going to predict that they'd put up 70 points on UNC. But you could reasonably expect that James Madison was going to put up a good fight in that game. Now you take a closer look at Duke's record. Duke's, not the Dukes, one more time. Wins over Elon, Northwestern in a game that they had like 6 points. The dreaded somehow I'm bringing up this Northwestern Duke game again that had 6 points through 4 quarters and goes over, and so they get a win in overtime there. A win over Connecticut, which they did not cover. And then a win last time out over Middle Tennessee, which was missing a ton of starters in that game. So I think there's some inflated numbers for Duke at this point. This Duke offense is not built to be in a shootout. I expect a big game from Omarion Hampton here as well. And I think the UNC passing attack is just going to spread it around and have a time against this Duke defense here. I think that offense overwhelms Duke in this matchup, and they won't be able to keep up, and they're going to get the win in this game. So I like them on the money line here.
I'm not going to sit here and say I outright disagree with you. I thought about
You
it,
can.
but we don't need their vibes on a
It's your
Saturday morning.
favorite.
I am going to sit here and say Manny Diaz does not like Mac Brown. Mac Brown threw Manny Diaz under the bus in Mac's last season at Texas. Like 2 or 3 weeks into that season, BYU went off on Texas, and Mac Brown ran over Manny Diaz, and then Mac Brown retired because now he's back in North Carolina. Second of all, I look at Duke's defense as the best unit on the field. And Duke's weakness is its offense, but it's going against a North Carolina defense, and I don't think you can trust Jeff Collins. I've been thinking about this, and for those longtime listeners, they'll know that if I ever meet a relative of Gene Chizik, I'm going to get a broken nose because some of the things I've said about Gene Chizik over the years. I look at North Carolina's defense. It's still coordinated by somebody with the initials GC. I'm seeing a lot of similarities between Jeff Collins as defensive coordinator and Gene Chizik as defensive coordinator, which might make Duke's weakness, its offense, look better than usual. I'm staying away from this game. And I found a way to slander Gene, not slander because slander is false. I found a way to hit Gene Chizik with a stray once again because this is my most unique skill.
It is. You are not limited to who can catch strays from you, Douglas. It's a joy to be around you all the time.
Hey, that's the nicest thing you've ever said about me. Let me throw one more stray out there at my home state. At the Wisconsin Badgers, they, for the second year in a row, have their transfer quarterback go down with an injury. Last year was SMU transfer Tanner Mordecai. This year was Miami transfer Tyler Van Dyke. So for the second year in a row, Miami State transfer Braden Locke has to step in for them. Now, what stands out to me about this, Braden Locke was a decent recruit, and he went to an SEC school for a reason. He has averaged only 5.2 yards per attempt in his 6 Bucky appearances. Mordecai last year was averaging 6.6. Van Dyke this season was averaging 6.2. Falling by a yard from Van Dyke and nearly a yard and a half from Mordecai shows how much the Wisconsin offense loses downfield push with Locke behind center. Wisconsin already doesn't have much push. It is absurd when you look at their running splits. Wisconsin stays ahead of the chains on 51.7% of rush attempts, gains 4 yards on first down, gains 3 yards on second down, that kind of thing. That's number 4 in the country. Wisconsin is number 96 in expected points added per rush, which means Wisconsin gains 3 or 4 yards and never anything more. This team does not push downfield. And anybody who listened to me talk about USC last week, anybody who listened to me talk about USC's defense on Tuesday knows we found out the hard way USC's defense is still prone to giving up explosive rushes. It gave up 3 and lost to Michigan. Those 3 plays were what lost USC that game. Well, Wisconsin has no explosiveness whatsoever. So I gave out Wisconsin team total under on Tuesday. I'm going to double dip, take USC by 2 touchdowns. I got that even, 14 today. Neg 110 at Caesars. I was surprised I could still get that. So if you can, act now. I'm betting on USC's defense again because Wisconsin has absolutely no downfield push. And it's unfortunate. You want to see players be healthy. Tyler Van Dyke was once a enjoyable, promising quarterback before Mario Cristobal showed up and may or may not have ruined him. Braden Locke does not have – see, I threw another stray there. Sorry, Mario. I'm not even sorry a little bit. You should have lost last night. These are the things that make me doubt Wisconsin, just like I doubted Minnesota earlier today. It is not a good day for the artist formerly known as the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I also wrote up a props piece for that game, and Locke's under passing yards made that article. Go over to covers.com and check that out as well. We've got tons of coverage for that game, but no disagreement from me with you on that one. I think if USC can tighten up that tackling, like you said, and I expect that they will, then it should be a tough game for the Badgers here. Like you said, no explosive capability out of them.
We got through most of our comments. We have one here that I don't want us to forget. Trent Trammell asks us about Texas Tech, neg 1.5 in the first half. It is still available. I'm seeing it as low as neg 107 at Bet Rivers. That's hosting Cincinnati, and you and I feel Cincinnati's pretty bad. Cincinnati looks better right now because it took it to Houston last week. That might be a nice overreaction spot that Trent has identified of the world putting any faith whatsoever in Cincinnati's 34-0 win last week. Treat that like a 10-0 win because once Houston was losing, Houston didn't care. And you might see some a better number here for Texas Tech. First half, full game. They're a field goal favorite. I like this thinking from Trent. Yeah,
I really do too. Texas Tech has one of my favorite running backs in the country that nobody talks about, in Taj Brooks. Cincinnati's defense is, like we said, not very good. Let me bring it up here. Their rush defense, they rank 108th in the country in defensive success rate against the rush. I might just go look right now and see if I can find a rushing yard prop for Taj Brooks. 112.5 is pretty steep, but you know what? I don't hate that play at all. Like, I really think that they're going to run.
Cincinnati.
It is Cincinnati. So I'm going to have a lean toward. I might go make a play on Taj Brooks over 112.5 rushing yards in this game. I don't hate that -1.5 in the first half as well. Good pick up there.
I will continue your thinking there by pointing out that Cincinnati ranks 108th in the country in defensive success rate against the rush. Now, they limit explosive plays for the most part, but they give up those 3, 4, 5 yard gains with regular frequency.
And when that running back is doing that, when that running back is Taj Brooks, like those are 4 and 5 yard gains. And then when those pile up, then they become 10 and he breaks one for 10, he breaks one for 20. Like this is set up well for Texas Tech, I think.
That's why we like these comments. They make us think about ones that we haven't thought about. And before we get out, we need to lean into our brand, something we have thought about extensively. Yes, this is a Utah pod. Bobby Newport, yes. Thank you very much. We believe in the Utes to win the national championship as long as Cam Rising plays at some point again this season.
Yeah. I think there was a comment too about, we can talk more about Alabama and Georgia if you want, Douglas.
Are you going to join me? Did you ever join me and Parker on the Alabama money line? You said that late Tuesday that you were thinking about it. I
didn't officially jump, and then the line started jumping back and forth, and now I think I'm just going to stay away from the money line unless I was getting that +110 with Alabama at this point. Georgia's still a good football team. Like we can't disagree on that at this point. But Bobby Newport also put in the chat here. He likes Jam Miller or Ryan Williams for an anytime TD. I really like the Ryan Williams one. That made my SGP for the write-up for this game. That what he's doing is incredible. And if they are going to hit an explosive play in this one, it's going to be to Ryan Williams. He's a really, really talented guy, and he has the chance to score in this game. And I think it was something almost like 2-1. So I like that play.
The best number I am seeing as of now is +105 at Caesars. If anybody wants to join Parker and I on the Alabama money line.
Oh, you mean the money line? Sorry.
Now, and that is, I do want to, you tend to be a little critical of us. I am generally just a skeptical person. Let's give ourselves a pat in the back. That last week there were 3 huge games. And yeah, USC gave up that 3 big plays and a pick 6 to Michigan. We nailed those handicaps. And so, yeah, I'm cheering for Alabama today just to continue that trend. These biggest games, these corporate moments, if we stay on top of it, maybe they'll keep us on the air. They also keep us on the air because we have all these people jumping in, all these people subscribing to College Football 134 on other podcast platforms. We appreciate it. We should let them get on with their mornings, recap our bets, and get on out of here before the football.
Yeah, once again, I just want to reiterate once again, thank you guys so much. This engagement is awesome. Please keep liking, subscribing, verbs. And yeah, my bets today, Georgia-Bama, -24 in the first half. Like to think that's going to be a low scoring one. KJ Jefferson over 40.5 rushing yards against Colorado. Lots of angry runs in that one. Oklahoma-Auburn under 22.5 in the first half. Bad QB play in that one. And then the UNC money line +110. I think they bounce back. And from Tuesday, very quickly, James Madison -20.5 versus a terrible Ball State team. Houston team total under 13.5 against Iowa State. I really don't see Houston scoring 2 touchdowns in this one. And of course, UNLV -3.5 versus Fresno State. 3-point win incoming.
3.1 incoming. We will hit my bets from the week. Tuesday, I took Nebraska neg 10 at Purdue. That's now 10.5 at most places. Utah by 11 against Arizona. The Cam Rising games continue. That fell as low as 7.5 this week, has now returned to 9 last I checked. The Wisconsin team total under 16.5 against USC. I just do not believe Bucky can push the ball. And that Alabama money line +110. Kalen DeBoer, Jalen Milroe take control of the SEC. And from today, Notre Dame next 6.5 because I continue to believe the Louisville offense is a sham. Michigan 10.5 against Minnesota because good things do not happen in Minnesota sports. Also, Michigan's just going to run the ball a lot. UNLV by 2.5 against Fresno State. If I had been on my toes, I would have found a prop bet of UNLV by exactly 3 to spite Andrew. And USC by 2 touchdowns against Wisconsin because Wisconsin cannot push the ball down the field. That should do it for us, Andrew. You enjoy your day of football. We will be back here next Saturday live on the Covers YouTube and Twitter channels at 9 a.m. Eastern.